Hello, government students. I know you've been waiting to hear probably around 5 p.m. today. In a couple hours, you'll see this posted up on my YouTube channel. A couple things that you'll need to know, several things that you'll need to know in regard to, these ideas for the test tomorrow. And I know we haven't had enough time in class, so let me go through these things and hopefully it can help you out. All right, so in no particular order, without giving the test completely away, we have the first angle to be aware of is a blank is the common way of living with enforceable rules. Ooh, that is right, Hunter. A government is the common way of living with enforceable rules. Another thing is a good example of an autocracy was, yes, you are correct, Sophie, that would be either Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, Hitler's Germany. Those are probably the acceptable ones to go for. The blank power creates laws. That would be legislative, right? And you got it. Not the ones of executive or whatever, but legislative. A blank is when registered voters of a party hold an election for their party's nominee. That is not a caucus, but ding, ding, ding. Yes, you are correct, Kennedy. That is a primary. A blank is like herding a bunch of cats. Yeah, that would be a confederacy, as I've had some students in here talking about the Articles of Confederation and all of its failures. In fact, no confederacy in our world's history has ever succeeded, ever. Not just the southern states, if you will. Okay, next one. I vote because this country has done so much for me. It is my obligation to go on November 3rd. This person votes because of, you got it, civic duty. Civic duty. Okay, pre-1960, the best predictor for how someone voted was family, followed by party ID or party affiliation. Those will be acceptable. Post-1960, the best predictor for how someone voted was family, followed by candidate evaluation, right? It switches there. So pre-1960 is party ID, that's the second best. And post-1960 was candidate evaluation. Okay, the blank allowed people instead of state legislatures to elect senators. Now this is important. You guys will just have to stick with me on this. That last page of notes we didn't get to. So you're like, I don't know what amendment allowed people to vote for state senators, or rather let me say that again. I don't know what amendment allowed for people instead of state legislatures to vote for senators, and that would be, ding, 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 that would be the 17th Amendment. Okay? People started changing who they voted for in the 1960s because of, and that would be TV or media. That's acceptable as well, but TV, don't say like just candidate evaluations. It's the TV. That's what really set it apart. Okay, true or false? Utah has complete and absolute sovereignty over itself. That's false. That is false. They don't, right? It's a federal system, just as I've had some students talking about here, that federalism can be defined as having a strong national government, or weak, but also with layers in a local or state entity. True or false? A true oligarchy allows the people to vote on certain issues. That would be false. A true oligarchy doesn't. It is those leaders who are in charge and in control, and they make the calls. Some of you may have gotten dinged on that on your papers, actually, too. Of the other three branches of government, bureaucracy is most closely connected to the executive branch. That's true, right? Bureaucracy and executive are together. Many people will consider those two one and the same. A true republic allows the people to change the laws if necessary. That's false. Absolutely. The republic laws are there. They're not going anywhere. Caucuses are more popular today because they allow for vocal participation. That would be false because they allow for vocal participation, but they're not more popular today than primaries or other ways. Okay? An initiative becomes a referendum when it has enough signatures and is then placed on the ballot in the general election. Okay, so we're going to go, this one's a little tricky here, all right? We're going to say false here. I know Michael was asking before in fifth hour of how that works. So you have two distinct things. Initiative is when it has enough signatures and then gets on as an initiative on the ballot, right? You'll see it on the ballot, looks the same. A referendum is when the state legislature proposes it and it then gets on the ballot. So it looks the same, but they're different. So that's why it's false. An initiative does not then become into a referendum. They're two separate things. So that's why it's false. The biggest barrier to people actually voting is that America requires its people to vote for so many offices. That's false. That is the second biggest reason, but not the biggest reason. A person is a policy voter if she only cares about jobs, likes Orrin Hatch's stance on jobs, sees Hatch's difference from his competition, and goes to the polls. That's true. That is a policy voter. They've met those 4 criteria we talked about today. The 19th Amendment allows people instead of electors to vote for the president. That's false because our presidency is still voted in by the Electoral College, but now we have more emphasis by the people in suggesting it, and the states usually go with what the electors say. And that's part of, we'll mention it for the free response, it's a little hard. I mean, whatever section that is. It's a little hard for people to get their head around the Electoral College. So I'll talk about it today. We didn't get to it in notes, but this will be on the test, and this is me telling you. Okay, this is another wrinkle. True or false? An educated minority is more likely to vote than a white person who has the same level of education. That's true. This is the one exception. So though we gave those top 5 things of education and race and age and if they're male or female or married, right? Those things determine if you're going to vote or not that we can look at. There is an exception that a minority voter who is educated will vote more likely than a white person with the same level of education. That's the one exception, maybe because they are educated and know that that right was even more hardly fought for, so they're willing to go even further on that. So that is true. An educated minority is more likely to vote than a white person who has the same level of education. That's true. Okay, that's important. We haven't covered it. Make sure you're on that. I do fear in like a week's time we hand back the tests that students will say, well, wait a second. We didn't mention that in the class. I was like, review module. With these shorter classes, we've had to make up some stuff. So this is one of those parts. Okay. Judges are selected by this person. That would be the president. Okay. They nominate the person. The Senate chooses to confirm it or not. And that goes back into, on that second page, in the current setup of our country, and I'm not requiring you to fill this out for those second page of notes. I'm not going to hold that against you, but for the test, you got to be aware. In the original setup, the House was voted in by the people, the Senate was chosen by state legislatures, the president was definitely selected by the Electoral College, and the judges were nominated and then confirmed, but selected by the president. So those groups, that's how it was. In the current setup, you can see, and this goes back to Jacob Morrell's claim that we are a more democratic republic than republic with democratic principles, and he's right on. We are more now, in this snapshot, a democratic republic, but not by design. We have grown into that, meaning there's more democracy. So the House and the Senate from the 17th Amendment are voted in by the people, and the president is also going to be suggested by the people. You could almost say they are elected by the Electoral College, you could say it that way, meaning people had a say, and most states went that way, though they don't have to. And then the judges are selected by the president. So you can see, whereas before it was like one half of one branch that was done by the people, now you have pretty much 3 of the 4 different options done by the people. Yes, the Electoral College is there, but people honor what the people, or the government honors what the people say with the Electoral College. Okay. If people have this, they are much more likely to vote, right? That's education. Let's see. A type of government where the head of government is also the head of the main religion, that is, yes, Vatican City, etc., that's theocracy. A person believes he has this if he feels his vote counts and can cause a chain reaction of change. That would be political efficacy. And it's a feeling, it sounds rough, but that's what we're looking at. Country or group that helps govern itself, that's a state, right? Whether Utah or big country or whatever, that helps govern itself. A couple different examples. This is a type of government with no branches, all power in one body, and oppression on its people. That's authoritarian. This system has the legislative and executive powers combined into one body, just like some of these wonderful students here talking about that the UK started it, and other countries have used it since they've colonized them. But you have the executive and legislative branches in that one body. That is Parliament. Parliament. Electors are selected by this person usually, meaning electors are the electoral college members. So for each state, they have those. They have, in the case of Utah here, 6 total electors. Those 6 representing the Republican side or Democrat side, depending on who wins. Those guys are chosen by party leaders. Those electors aren't voted for by people. The parties get to choose them, and then they usually follow through with what the people say. Okay, so this is one we touched on, but the idea of the unalienable rights that even Sarah alluded to of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or life, liberty, and property, right? Just look at those 3, life, liberty, and property. Let's keep it simple. I don't want to be materialistic, but maybe Locke and Jefferson meant the same thing of pursuit of happiness and property, okay? But those 3, if you look at how the Articles stunk and the Constitution was written to help address that, the question comes up is what's there to protect our life, right? And it would be the national military, right? Because they would protect your life, whereas in the Articles, there wasn't a national military. They had no way to enforce it. So you as an individual would need more protection. So the military and taxation help provide for that is just that, right? So that's national military. Okay, and this is one that we didn't cover, but I'm telling you now. Is Madison believed that people in government can act like a certain animal? In this case, it would be crabs. Now, before Mason and Triple T and Michael start giggling, crabs in the sense that if you put one crab in a bucket, it will easily climb right out and get you. But if you put 2 or more crabs in a bucket, what happens? Well, they keep each other down. They prevent one from getting over each other because they're competing so much that it means you as the ship owner are kept safe, right? So they're kept down that way. So Madison believed that if we could have a big enough republic, and if we had federal and state type levels and different branches, they'd compete with each other so that you as the individual would not get bit in the butt or pinched in the butt by a crab. So he believed that people and government can act like this, and that's crabs, okay? And I'm sure Triple T is laughing at that. Okay, now to our free response section, and this is where things get could be challenging, could be easy. I don't know. Meaning, and I'll put this on the website. I believe 4th hour 1, the incentive cycle, and they were able to get through more notes, and that in good conversation. That was a challenge for both classes of trying to balance out discussion and then also getting through notes. And I think yesterday 5th hour struggled a bit. Michael was gone, unfortunately, so that could have hurt them, and that was an edge that 4th hour took. But that balancing was done by 4th hour. So we'll see. We'll see. I might put up to a vote to 4th hour as to which section we have omitted. I'll give them sort of the updates. But for free response. Okay, one that should be easy, I think, but if you had to, I don't want to give it totally away, but if you had to define, like if you're shipwrecked on an island, how would communism work, how would socialism work, and how would capitalism work? So basically communism, the party controls the resources. Socialism, people directly control it and they take turns. Capitalism, people own, invest in the resources, and if you fail, you starve, right? Like some discussion like that has to be done. You have to talk about who is controlling the resources. Try not to use words like government or but party. Okay. The other thing I want you to be aware of too is the government and political spectrums, like the ones right above my head that you can't see because it's sort of being blinded out, I guess. Those ones you should probably commit to memory. Hint, hint, hint. Okay. Governmental spectrum, political spectrum, not the other ones. Just those for now. And then finally, this one is a doozy. Some of you did that paragraph, and I know the Electoral College were sort of giving a crammed in version. The long and short of it, you should be able to discuss the 4 main steps of the Electoral College. We'll keep it simple. But be aware of the purpose of it. Like we saw from the original setup, we were not a democracy. We had democratic principles. We're more of a democracy now. We're still not a full one. Either way, they chose to go with an Electoral College system because they wanted to have the wise village leaders for each of the different states have say in choosing who the president would be. So Washington had a lot of success because people generally thought he would be a good guy, and he was. And so that's how he was selected by the Electoral College. But over time, the states, per the Constitution, have the right to determine voting eligibility and how to register and all those things. Tied to it is a little bit of how they will choose those electors. Now, they before could have done like a dart on a board and been like, whatever. Over time, we've gone with the idea that says, as I'm getting a phone call, I'm sure, from President Trump. I'll get to it later. Over time, you will have a situation where people will be expecting to vote, and their vote actually matters for the presidency. Doesn't have to, but we've expected that as democracies come more and more. So most states have gone with the idea of, let's do this. You will vote, and it is not necessarily voting for Biden or for Trump. You're voting for electors for Biden or electors for Trump, who then will decide and actually vote in. Now, some states can try to put penalties on, like, and if they don't go with what people say, then they'll get in trouble. The problem is that is constitutionally questionable. But also, the individual can do it, and it's already done. It's already done. You can't undo it, right? Like, it's already done. You can't redo the elector, because that elector has that right to do what they want. Now, tradition has now become that the elector will go with what the majority says. So aside from 2 states in our union, every state is a winner-take-all. So in the case of Utah, we have 6 votes, not a whole lot. You combine the number of reps and the number of senators, and that's what you do to get your electors. Washington, D.C. has 3, similar to my lovely home state of Delaware. And that's the only additional one. Washington actually gets a say. So either way, those are those electors. And with those electors, they all have a chance to choose. But these are the steps. There's 4 steps to the Electoral College. And knowing that that's the purpose of them doing it, be aware that it's not just to be mean or to give people less power. It's intended to help protect against mobocracy or sheeple, people following like sheep. That's what it's expected or intending to do. Furthermore, it has some worth because it balances population. If you only go with population on one hand to make decisions, then the cities would control everything, a popular vote, which doesn't mean it's bad. It just means in a geographically diverse country like the U.S., that is a huge consideration. This isn't the U.K. or even France or even Italy, where geographically there are some more continuous ideas. We have huge pockets, and even with 13 colonies or states, our founders knew that there would be some problems. So going full on with population has its own problems because the cities would have huge say, and Midwest and plain states would not have as much. That's the purpose behind it. Now, there are problems because there's a winner-take-all system. Going back to the 6 electors as my example, if you were to win 51% of the popular vote in the Electoral College, you get 6 votes. To be completely honest, ladies and gentlemen, that's the problem with the Electoral College, is it's the winner-take-all system. I think it's Maine and Nebraska, Maine and one other state. I think it's Maine and Nebraska. Those 2 are the ones to do a winner-take-most. So based on the numbers, if 51% of the vote went for one person, they'd get the majority of the votes, but then the minority votes would still go there. Case in point, Florida is a winner-take-all. That's why the 2000 election was so weird, is whoever won the 51% won all of their electoral votes. And so that's, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with the Electoral College, potentially, is not that popular vote matters more. Other countries it might, but we have some geographic realities that other countries do not have. We're a huge country. But also you have the angle of winner-take-all. That's the problem, because then you have no way to get any electors. Think if you're a Democrat in Utah, it would be wonderful if you get 1 elector, just to feel like you have efficacy, right? So the 4 steps for the Electoral College. 1 is the convention season. The electors are chosen. So around like July or August, this year, for instance, the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention happen, and those party leaders choose, in the case of Utah, 6 electors for the Democrat side, which, spoiler alert, no Democrats winning the presidency from Utah for a while. But they have those 6 ready for the Democrats. Usually they're party volunteers or people who suck up. They are not the individuals who were like the wise village leaders from before. And then the Republican side is those 6 as well. And those 6 are chosen who are party volunteers chosen by party leaders because they know, and for mythical points, why would they choose party volunteers? Well, yes, they choose party volunteers because they know that they'd fall in line and go with what the party wants. So say Utah, which it probably will, goes Republican, wins the majority of the popular vote. All 6 of those Republican electors, that's step 1, they will be ready. And then step 2 is a general election in November, all right, in which people cast their vote. And then you will see in step 2 where those electors, like if Utah has a majority go there, like the 6 on the Republican side are like, all right, we're ready. And then step 3 is in mid-December, the electors send their ballots in. So in the case of Utah, those 6 will send their ballots in mail. They don't actually meet in one big group. And each state will go through and do that. They'll send ballots in December to D.C. So in the case of like Delaware, which is always blue, always Democrat, their 3 electors at the same time would vote all at the same time into D.C. And then step 4, in January, the VP counts and announces the winner. All right, so prior to inauguration, but the VP, whoever is the outgoing vice president, so in 2000, that was weird that Al Gore sort of read the votes to say he lost, right? But the VP counts and announces the winner. Now, some of you, and I'll remind you of the 4 steps in a second, some of you might be confused and saying, but wait, like on election night, November 3rd, we know who our president is. A couple things. It's built on like 2 presumptions or lies. One is that the data that they're getting is real because we don't actually have the real reported numbers. We have statistical estimation, right? Survey and sample sizes, which usually are right, but sometimes aren't. And 2, that's assuming the electors actually go with what the majority say. They don't have to. There have been instances in the past where somebody's voted for a dog, a dead person, Nixon, even after Nixon wasn't running. We've had people write names that were sort of incoherent. Those are problems, but that's the electoral thing. They wanted to separate it from democracy. There is reason behind what people say, oh, it's so old. Winner take all is probably the bigger issue. So, in recap, 4 steps to Electoral College. 1, convention season. 2, general election in November. 3, electors send in ballots in December. And 4, VP counts and announces the winner. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're looking at. And because Mason wanted me to say this, make sure you guys are going on my merch store, buying the merch, hit that subscribe button, smash that sucker. We will catch you guys later. See ya.